The old house.
It was a stormy night, but Natalia decided that she would visit her sister no matter what. She was in labor, and nobody was there to support her, as she lived in a small remote town. Natalia was in her house, surrounded by its warmth, until the call of her sister arrived. The second she got out of her house, she too was alone. Her son was with his father, Peter. Natalia was driving all the way to the hospital. Taking her car quickly, she was now almost halfway, and in the middle of the old forest road. At first, it was raining, but Natalia was baffled because it had started to snow. She didn't like that she had to slow her car to see through the snowflakes. The headlights didn't help. Suddenly, a truck's horn blew. Its lights flashed in front of her face, and blinded, she drifted. Natalia didn't know that in the middle of the forest, there was a bridge. Below it was a river. Her car went over, bursting into flames and plunging into the icy river. She was killed instantly. When Peter returned to his house, the cops were waiting for him. His senses were immediate to know something was wrong, and he then asked the officer, "What happened?" The officer looked at the child. His name was Max. "I would like to talk to you. Alone," he replied. The officer took Peter to the corner. This was the first time Max saw his father cry. Later on, he got to know that his mother had died, while her sister had given birth to a baby girl. There was an end and a beginning at the same time. Peter didn't know how to react. He didn't feel like living in the city anymore. Finding out that his wife had died while trying to help another human being, Peter questioned the existence of God. To that, he began packing his bag. "Dad, where are we going?" asked Max. "You know, when I was a little kid, I lived with my parents in the countryside until I decided to leave home at 16. But I guess it's important sometimes, family. You never seen them ever since you had left?" Peter shook his head no. They grabbed a few things and packed up the car, and both were on the road. Somewhere in his mind, he decided to visit his parents and bring Max. So on the way, he told his son how his father was a bit abusive and how his mother was soft. "That combination between partners never works. Nothing like me and your mom," he said while driving, almost forgetting his wife was dead. The drive was long because Peter had left the house at the dawn. At that moment, his son was sleeping, because all night Max was awake thinking for obvious reasons. The long roads were very scenic, and the motion of the early morning drive was calming. When Max woke, Peter told all the stories related to his parents. Max was not really listening and playing with his Nintendo Switch. In a way, he was not accepting his mother's death and tried to block it out. Peter was tired, but decided to keep going. He had wanted to reach the old house before dark. When he approached the forest road, he kept his eyes on his son, because the bridge up ahead was where his mother died. After it had passed, Peter was glad that Max was playing and did not notice. It was starting to get cold, and the icy roads were quite a challenge to navigate. The deluge of snow didn't stop until finally Peter had reached his old family home with his son. He was nervous to meet his parents after so long. The place where he grew up felt the same, cold, frozen, and now, the garden that was hidden by the snow. Standing on the threshold, he knocked on the door. A moment later, his aunt opened the door. Both were shocked. Very soon, they all were sipping coffee, and his Aunt Lydia explained. "About 10 years ago, your father beat your mother one day in a drunken rage. That's where I stepped in. He had almost killed me too." She showed the scar below her eyes. "But we were lucky. He died the same night of a stroke. I stayed here with your mother, and we carried on to live in this house. But I didn't know that her time would end so soon. It was 6 years ago. I returned from work, and I found her lying by the stairs. She must have fallen. So I was very sad, and for the last few years, I lived here, alone. You don't mind us staying here for a few days, Lydia?" asked Peter. Of course not. It's your house. I'm glad, she exclaimed, that you are finally here. I thought I had no family left. She then looked at Max. But now all of a sudden I do. Max saw her wicked smile. Aunt Lydia felt weird to him. He didn't say anything to his dad because he was now telling how Natalia had lost her life yesterday. Watching her expressions change, Max was feeling that something wasn't right. Somehow, his eyes got directed to the fireplace. There was a voice whispering his name, and with that, he didn't feel like getting up, but got up anyway. Walking close to the flames, he felt like someone was there, controlling him. The second he was about to touch the wood, Lydia immediately turned back and almost snapped. It's kerosene-soaked, be careful, child. Max immediately snapped out of the trance and was fine, just a bit shaken. Later he told his dad and said it was as if a spirit was there. Peter had reassured him it was nothing. They both went to bed. Peter was restless and he was staring at the wall. When he tried sleeping on the bed, it somehow felt very hot. To that, he was baffled and looked at his son, who now was sleeping deeply. Peter didn't want to disturb him, and just then, he heard a sound as if someone was calling him. It was coming from the living room. Jumping up, he couldn't see clearly in the darkness. Switching on the flashlight of his iPhone, he followed the direction of the voice. Again, it was coming from the fireplace. The wood was arranged in such a way that the pieces of them spelled out a word. Killed. That was so bizarre, he thought. His heart started to beat when he thought that there might be a presence in the house after all. Peter decided to investigate what lay inside the fireplace. Going there and bending to see if something was hidden, he wasn't disappointed when he found an old shoebox with burned paper. Looking inside, it was clear what it was: a will. Your mother wanted to give you this home and some money, a voice interrupted Peter. When he looked back, he saw Aunt Lydia holding a shotgun in his direction. You don't have to do this, he pleaded. I will leave and will never come back. Do you think I believe you? She replied. Killing your father was easy, but your mother, oh, she was something. What you are holding in your hand is her original will. I decided to kill her and forge the will so I could keep the house. It was mine, and you have no rights. I wondered how you... Before she could say another word, the windows of the house began to bang loudly. It was at that minute Peter found an opening and charged her. He grabbed the shotgun, screaming as he turned, twisting his ankle. He pulled the trigger, but the shotgun was empty. He couldn't believe that Lydia tricked him. It was then she took out a knife because Peter was now vulnerable and an easy target. He tried dodging her, but his ankle was badly hurt, slowing him down. Yet when Lydia was almost about to stab him in the neck, an illuminated figure appeared behind his evil aunt. Lydia was trapped in the spirit's hold, unable to move. It became clear to Peter that the ghost was his mother. As Lydia screamed and shouted, the ghost ripped out Lydia's tongue for lying all these years. She collapsed in a pool of blood. Peter was shocked and stunned. He called the police, an ambulance. They believed she had done this to herself, and she was taken to the hospital. The police didn't ask too much, and Peter just agreed with whatever they thought, fearing his son would be alone if he was imprisoned. After a week in hospital, a van had come to take Lydia to a mental home, where she stayed, and eventually she did go mad. Meanwhile, Peter and Max stayed on for a few more weeks. Then Max had to return to school. Peter had arranged for him to stay with Natalia's sister and new baby until he had sold the old house. Soon after the sale was completed, and Peter was glad to get away from this small town. He had started to miss his son and wondered how he was getting on in school. Driving back home, it had started to snow heavily. Though it was morning, it was dark, cloudy, and felt like night. Going back through the same country roads towards the highway to the city, suddenly, a horn of a truck blew in the midst. The truck swerved in the icy road ahead and plowed into Peter. He was at the same bridge where his wife had died only months before. He screamed as the car smashed the barrier, falling into the same cold river as his beloved wife. In the end, Max had to stay with his aunt and her newborn baby Lydia. Growing up an orphan was difficult for him. Self-doubt, bouts of depression, and being bullied at school. He vowed to help people like himself when he was older. Unfortunately, the medication he was prescribed no longer worked and became addictive. It was then, many years later, during a bipolar episode, he jumped from the same icy bridge that had killed his parents. Some people say it was bad luck, and some others say that the family was simply cursed. The end.